Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Welcome to the wonderfully weird world of the Tinfoil Hat Fan Club, where we talk about all the batshit crazy stuff that goes on in the world, and there is loads. And today, we're going to talk about the Lubbock Lights, okay, a strange mass sighting that happened in Lubbock, Texas in 1951, okay. Pretty orby, pretty cool. So stay tuned, I'll tell you all about it.
Welcome, believers. Welcome. Please like and subscribe and ding that notification bell to catch up on all my latest content.
Okay, then, the Lubbock Lights. Right, although there were sporadic reports of sightings in the Lone Star State during the first half of the 20th century, it seems with the 1950s came an increase in aerial activity. Many point to then recent Roswell incident still being fresh in people's minds, as well as the increasing interest culturally in science fiction as simple reasons for the wave, okay? Although this way of thinking may prove to be exactly that, it seems a little simplistic and even dismissive to me. Let's not forget the 1952 UFO wave, okay? Hundreds of people saw UFOs, right? So, beginning in August 1951, reports of strange boomerang-shaped lights over the skies of Lubbock, Texas, would arise, right? They were from very credible witnesses, not people looking to make any money and to find their 15 minutes of fame. Reports would come from college professors to amateur photographers. So we're not messing about here, right? One such sky watcher, a Carl Hart Jr., and I'll stick his photo there, right, even managed to capture 5 photographs of the bizarre light formations. The military would deny involvement, of course they would, or acknowledge any such activity. The sightings themselves would last around 12 months before seeming to cease. So let me tell you the story, right? 9:10 p.m. on August the 25th, 1951, a Dr. W.I. Robinson, professor of geology at the Texas Technical College, stood in the backyard of his home in Lubbock, Texas, and chatted with 2 colleagues, right, as you do, probably over a beer or something, right? The other men were Dr. A.G. Oberg, a professor of chemical engineering, and Professor L. Ducker, head of the Department of Petroleum Engineering. So very clever fellas, right? The night was clear and dark. Suddenly, all 3 men saw a number of lights race noiselessly across the sky from horizon to horizon in a few seconds, right? So it pipped across. They gave the impression of about 30 luminous beads arranged in a crescent shape. Now, a few minutes later, another similar formation flashed across the night sky. So, look, 3 very intelligent men spotted something weird, right? This time, the scientists were able to judge that the lights moved through 30 degrees of arc in a second. A check the next day with the Air Force showed that no planes had been over the area at the time. This was but the beginning. Professor Ducker observed 12 flights of these luminous objects between August and November. So we're going to call this a flap, aren't we? All right, a miniature flap at that, right? Some of his colleagues observed as many as 10. So it wasn't just them, it was his colleagues too. Hundreds of non-scientific observers in a wide vicinity around Lubbock saw as many as 3 flights of the mysterious crescents in one night. Now, on the night of August the 30th, an attempt to photograph the lights were made by 18-year-old Carl Hart Jr., and I'll stick the photos behind me, right? He used a Kodak 35mm camera at 1/10 of a second. Working rapidly, Hart managed to get 5 exposures of the lights, and as I say, they're behind me, right? The pictures exhibited by Hart as a result of his effort show 18 to 20 luminous objects, more intense than the planet Venus, arranged in one or a pair of crescents. In several photographs, off to one side of the main flight, a larger luminosity is visible, like a mothercraft hovering near its aerial brood. Was that a mothercraft? We don't know, do we, right? Now, we're not talking about the flying saucer lunatic fringe here. We're talking about professional people who were apparently impressed enough by what they had seen to go out and try to observe them under scientific conditions. Said Roswell, New Mexico's college professor and photo analyst Dr. Donald Berzelson, right? So he's saying that these professors, they tried to see them again under scientific, I don't know what you call it, under scientific, don't know, conditions, under scientific conditions, right? But back in 1951, no one in Lubbock had a home video camera. Of course they didn't, right? But an 18-year-old college freshman named Carl Hart was a bud and still photographer who was just about to go to bed when he saw the Lubbock lights, all right? We've mentioned it before, right? So just grabbed my camera, he said, set the exposure at where I wanted it, ran back outside and waited. Then 2 more flights come over. I think I got 2 pictures of one and 3 of the other, Hart said. When I first processed them, I didn't think I had a thing until I really examined them closely because they didn't take up a lot of room on the negative. Okay, now that's obviously something a photographer would understand, right? Hart took the photos to his Boy Scout leader, who contacted a reporter for the local newspaper, which eventually published them. But only Hart endured the first in a series of grillings. I mean, you can imagine, can't you, right? Talk to the people at the Avalanche Journal. They were pretty sceptical, he said. Then after they published, first it was the Air Force, Hart said. Local Air Force investigators turned Hart over to higher-ups from out of town and eventually to FBI agents. I think he was getting a grilling. It was pretty intense questioning, he said. They went over and over and over my story. I guess trying to catch me in being inconsistent, but apparently they were satisfied eventually. Right, so they left him alone. Life magazine published a lengthy article in the spring of 1952. Now, over the years, a number of independent studies were conducted, right? After decades of intense scrutiny, there is no reason to believe Carl Hart faked anything. His photos are still among the most remarkable and vexing in UFO history. As I say, they are behind me, right? The government's official report was released in late 1951. Its conclusion? Guess. It's not swamp gas, right? Carl Hart captured on film highly reflective duck bellies. That is their conclusion, all right? That is the Air Force's conclusion, all right? Or at least they didn't use swamp gas, eh? Now, very clearly, this image shows that they are not birds, Balzelson said, right? Balzelson, with advanced degrees in mathematics and literature, conducted an extensive computer analysis of Hart's photographs. This is, in my estimation, he says, the most spectacular of the photographs. It shows a regular flotilla of 18 large dish-like objects in the sky. I'm inclined to think that these objects may well each have been in excess of 200 feet in diameter, he said. Now, Balzelson also said that the objects Hart photographed display what appear to be structures on the underside. They may link them to whatever crashed in nearby Roswell, New Mexico, 4 years earlier. And mate, who are we to say they're not linked to the crash in Roswell, eh? A kind of cell-like or beehive structure underneath, which is kind of interesting because it matches nicely with witness descriptions of the Roswell object, Balzelson said. I think he simply photographed something anomalous in the sky and was treated, frankly, pretty shabbily for his trouble. Carl Hart has never sought fame or fortune for the photos and took. In fact, it's just the opposite. He said, got to the point, just as soon pass it on, he says. Something comes up, I'd just as soon ignore it, Hart said. I guess there's a group of people that still feels anybody who sees a UFO is some kind of nutcase. I get put in that category part of the time. Part of the people think anything like that has to be fake. So I get a little bit of that. He understands, right, that he's either called a nutcase or the photographs are fake. And I mean, it still goes on today, doesn't it, really? Not as bad, though. Hey, if you notice it, there is something in the media that's changing. You are not immediately ridiculed for seeing stuff like that, right? Now, even the government's analysis, some of it declassified years later, concluded there was no evidence of a hoax. that the negatives had not been retouched, that the lights were brighter than stars, and the object changed position in the formation. They're not saying it isn't duck bellies, but at least they're saying it isn't fake. So what was it that Hart and dozens of others witnessed in the sky over Lubbock so many years ago? He is as baffled as the rest of us. It's something that's unsolved, Hart said. I would love to know what they were, but at this period of time, I don't think I ever will. Right, so let's recap, right? So the photographs were taken at 5:30 p.m. and 10:37 p.m. The three Texas Tech professors examined the 18-year-old's photographs, but could find no explanation for the photos. Witness Roger Dodds heard a slight rustling or whooshing sound as the object passed overhead. He reported seeing them at 10:37 p.m. in late September. A report on the Lubbock lights reached the Air Force. Of course it would, right? The Air Force, as we say, examined the pictures in great detail and could neither prove nor disprove their authenticity. Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, the Air Force officer who became the first director of Project Blue Book, travelled to Lubbock to investigate the case, right? Now, Ruppelt later wrote a very good book about his experiences as a UFO investigator called The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, and I'll stick that behind me for a minute, okay? Check it out. Now, so, where did the idea of duck bellies come from? Well, it's an interesting question, and it's a question we all need to ask ourselves, right? It was Ruppelt who interviewed an elderly rancher in Brownfield. Now, the rancher claimed to have heard the unmistakable call of plover, a water bird with a 1-foot wingspread and an oily white breast that, he reckons, could easily reflect city lights. Okay, so the idea of lights reflecting on birds' bellies start brewing, okay? But game wardens said the phenomena could not have been plovers, birds about the size of a quail, since these birds never fly in flocks larger than 3. And obviously there was, 10 to 20, okay? Now, T.E. Snyder Jr. reported, I saw something like people have been seeing, and it definitely was ducks. Although not accounting for the unbelievable speed, a reflection from the Westerners' driving theatre could cause some ducks to be illuminated. Okay, everything seems to point to flights of birds as an explanation of the mysterious phenomena that came to be known as the Lubbock Lights. And yet, of course, there are those who disagree. I ain't buying the bird thing. I'm not, right? Witnesses said that they saw dots of lights flying in a U and a V shape, passing in 2 and 3 second intervals. The number of dots reported in the formation ranged from 8 to 9 to 20 to 30. The lights appeared in the northeastern part of the sky and proceeded in a straight line to the southwest, right? The colour of the lights was about like the stars, only brighter, while others said they were either a blue or a white with a slight yellow tinge to them. Others described them as appearing as a string of beads, moving roughly in a semicircle and were soft, glowing bluish green. So what do you think then? Are you going to buy the bird thing? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying the bird thing. Right now, Dr. J.C. Cross, head of Technical Department of Biology, examined the 35mm photographs and asserted it definitely wasn't caused by birds. He said, no way, man, no way. Now, in Matador, reports were made of a noiseless aircraft flying at a low altitude without aid of propeller or wings. They said it was a different form of any craft they had ever seen. So I would assume, not knowing where Matador is, it's not that far from Lubbock, okay? To this day, those who contend the Lubbock Lights were visited by UFOs, while others say it was merely a natural phenomena. No one really can say for sure, but as it's stated in the history of Lubbock, Lubbock's reputation is greater in scientific circles for the UFO sightings or the light source sightings as they are for academic or civic reasons. So Lubbock really did do well out of these lights because it became very popular. So look, the Lubbock Lights, what do you think? What do you think of that? Now, what do you think of those lights, right? They look very much like the same sort of thing that was seen over the Phoenix area, eh? The Phoenix lights. They look very similar to that, you know. So I'm going to say that they're UFOs, but I always do. So what do you think? Look into it. Tell me what you think. Drop me a line. Are they birds or are they UFOs? I'm going to go UFOs. All right, look, thanks ever so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe if you can and ring that notification bell. And I will catch you on the next one. Thanks for sticking around.